Tonight, I am announcing Canada will be responding to the U.S. trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods.
Canada, once America's closest ally, is fighting back against aggressive tariffs with a retaliation plan that could change everything. For years, trade between the United States and Canada flowed smoothly, with billions of dollars crossing the border every single day. But now, Trump's proposed 25% tariffs have set off a diplomatic firestorm. So, what's at stake? Will this escalate into an all-out trade war between North America's biggest economies? Stick around because we're diving deep into how Canada is striking back, what this means for the United States, and how it could shake the global economy. What's happening? Donald Trump's re-election brought a significant wave of economic protectionism back to the forefront of North American relations. Among his immediate actions was a bold declaration, a 25% tariff on all Canadian imports, alongside tariffs targeting Mexico and China. Trump framed these tariffs as essential to protecting American industries from trade imbalances. According to his administration, these measures were designed to curb what he described as unfair trade practices by neighboring countries. However, Trump's move was not well received north of the border. Canada, long viewed as a stable and mutually beneficial trading partner, was blindsided by the announcement. Historically, both countries enjoyed a deeply integrated economic relationship. From military alliances to energy-sharing agreements, the two nations had always found ways to cooperate. Yet this tariff plan threatened to upend decades of trust and collaboration, putting over $800 billion in trade between the two countries at risk. The question on everyone's mind was simple. Would Trump really push this aggressive policy, and how would Canada respond? The backbone of Canada-US trade. At the heart of Canada's potential retaliation strategy lies the nation's energy exports. Canada supplies more than 50% of America's imported crude oil, with approximately 3,800,000 barrels crossing the border daily. Much of this heavy crude is refined in specialized facilities across the American Midwest, which rely almost exclusively on Canadian supplies. A sudden disruption in this flow could trigger chaos in the U.S. energy sector. Gasoline prices would skyrocket and refineries would face severe operational challenges. American consumers, already sensitive to fluctuations in fuel costs, would feel immediate financial strain. Politically, this would be a nightmare for Trump, given that his approval ratings were historically tied to economic indicators like fuel prices. Canada's control over energy exports places them in a position of significant leverage. The mere suggestion of restricting oil supply has already sparked debates in American political circles, with some advisors warning of the catastrophic consequences of escalating tensions with such a key trading partner. The seamless trade of energy products, once a cornerstone of US-Canada cooperation, is now a critical pressure point in this unfolding dispute. As tensions rose, both nations faced an uncertain future. Would cooler heads prevail, or was the world witnessing the start of a full-scale trade war in North America? Economic ripples across North America. The economic interdependence between Canada and the United States means that any trade disruption will reverberate far beyond government policies. Trade between the two countries is valued at over $2.5 billion every day, supporting millions of jobs on both sides of the border. Major industries, including automotive manufacturing, agriculture, and energy, rely on cross-border supply chains to function efficiently. Experts warn that prolonged tariff battles could destabilize these industries. For example, car manufacturers in both countries operate on a just-in-time supply model, with parts often crossing the border multiple times before a vehicle is fully assembled. Any delays or increased costs due to tariffs could cause significant production slowdowns, jeopardizing jobs in assembly plants and supplier networks. Furthermore, economists project that the tariffs could contribute to inflation, pushing up the price of everyday goods. Canadian farmers fear reduced access to the U.S. market, while American consumers face higher prices for products ranging from lumber to fresh produce. This growing economic tension underscores a painful truth. The North American economy is so tightly woven that even the smallest tariff hike can have a cascading effect. Both governments are acutely aware of the stakes, but political posturing continues to escalate the situation. With the groundwork of these tensions laid, Canada and the United States stand at a crossroads. Will they find a path to negotiation, or are they destined to spiral further into economic conflict? Oil diplomacy, a strategic weapon. The energy relationship between Canada and the United States has been central to both nations' economies for decades. Canada supplies over 3.5 million barrels of oil daily to its southern neighbor, which accounts for more than 50% of United States crude oil imports. The interconnected pipelines stretching from Alberta to major refineries in the Midwest and along the Gulf Coast are crucial lifelines for the North American energy sector. Now, with Donald Trump's tariffs threatening this dynamic, Ottawa is under immense pressure to retaliate by leveraging its energy exports. Canadian officials have hinted at either reducing oil supply or imposing export tariffs, which could send shockwaves across the United States economy. Refineries built to process heavy crude from Canada would struggle to find alternative sources, particularly since global suppliers like Venezuela remain limited due to ongoing political instability and sanctions. The immediate fallout of such a move would be severe. Experts predict that gasoline prices across the United States could surge by up to 20% within weeks. This price hike would increase costs for consumers and businesses, leading to inflationary pressures across multiple industries. The automotive, transportation, and manufacturing sectors would be particularly vulnerable, as higher energy costs would compound existing supply chain challenges. In response, American policymakers are scrambling to develop contingency plans, but alternative sources of heavy crude are scarce. The stage is now set for a potential energy crisis that neither country can afford to ignore. Yet, oil is only one of the critical components in Canada's strategic playbook. There is more at stake beyond just energy. With its vast natural resources including timber, minerals, and agriculture, Canada holds considerable leverage over its southern neighbor in broader economic and geopolitical matters. Trade dependencies. Beyond energy, Canada's extensive trade relationship with the United States involves an exchange of over $2.5 billion in goods and services daily. The United States relies heavily on Canadian imports of key raw materials, including lumber, steel, and aluminum. Industries such as construction and automotive manufacturing depend on these materials to keep costs down and maintain production schedules. Canada has already signaled its willingness to retaliate by targeting these sectors with high tariffs of its own. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has vowed to impose a 25% tariff on several iconic American exports, including agricultural products, alcohol, and textiles. The goal is clear: disrupt key industries in swing states where Trump's political support is strongest, thereby applying political pressure on the administration to reconsider its stance. This strategy not only aims to economically hurt strategic U.S. sectors, but also to send a signal of resilience and retaliation, ensuring Canada's stance is taken seriously on the world stage. Economists have pointed out that this tit-for-tat approach could result in a contraction of cross-border trade valued at nearly $1 trillion annually. For Canadian businesses, however, retaliation comes with risks. Many companies fear losing access to the lucrative American market, which represents approximately 75% of Canada's total exports. Nonetheless, the consensus among Canadian policymakers is that standing firm against Trump's protectionist measures is necessary to preserve national economic sovereignty. With trade battles escalating, another pressing concern emerges: Canada's vast reserves of critical minerals, essential for green energy technologies and global supply chains, which could also become a valuable bargaining chip in the ongoing trade tensions. The critical minerals card. Canada possesses some of the world's largest deposits of critical minerals, including potash, nickel, and uranium. These resources are vital to industries such as agriculture, renewable energy, and nuclear power. For example, potash is an essential component of fertilizers used in American farming, while uranium fuels many of the United States' nuclear power plants. Recognizing this leverage, Canada has floated the idea of restricting the export of certain critical minerals to the United States. This potential move has caught the attention of policymakers in Washington, who are aware that American industries would struggle to find quick replacements for these materials. China, one of the few other global suppliers of critical minerals, poses its own challenges due to existing geopolitical tensions and tariffs. Additionally, the time it would take to establish new supply chains could further exacerbate the problem, making the U.S. heavily dependent on Canadian resources for the foreseeable future. By weaponizing its critical minerals, Canada could force the United States to prioritize diplomatic negotiations. Experts predict that even a temporary disruption in supply chains could cause delays and cost overruns in key sectors, such as electric vehicle manufacturing and agriculture. The growing reliance on these minerals for clean energy technology makes the issue even more pressing. However, Canadian officials understand the need for caution. Overplaying their hand could push American businesses to accelerate efforts to develop domestic sources of these materials. materials, undermining Canada's long-term influence. While these economic strategies unfold, political alliances within Canada face their own tests under the strain of a growing trade war. National unity at stake. The escalating trade tensions have triggered debates within Canada's political landscape, particularly regarding how different provinces should respond. Alberta, the heart of Canada's oil industry, has called for aggressive retaliation, including cutting off energy exports to the United States. In contrast, provinces like Ontario and Quebec, which are more reliant on manufacturing and agricultural trade, advocate for a more measured approach to avoid further economic harm. This divide highlights long-standing regional tensions within Canada. The western provinces often feel marginalized in national policy decisions, especially when it comes to energy and resource development. The current trade crisis has reignited calls for greater autonomy in provinces like Alberta, where some political leaders have even suggested the possibility of separating from the Federation if federal policies continue to undermine their economic interests. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau faces a delicate balancing act. He must maintain national unity while pursuing a strong response to Trump's tariffs. To achieve this, Trudeau has launched consultations with provincial premiers to develop a coordinated strategy. Public opinion polls indicate that while most Canadians support retaliatory measures, there is also widespread anxiety about the potential for economic fallout. As tensions mount, political commentators warn that the stakes extend beyond economic considerations. The outcome of this trade conflict could shape Canada's relationship with the United States for years to come, influencing everything from energy policy to defense cooperation. With Canada's internal dynamics becoming increasingly complex, how are American political leaders responding to the unfolding crisis? Canada's economic countermeasures unveiled. Canada's response to Donald Trump's tariffs has been swift and calculated. With economic stakes high, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has outlined a multifaceted strategy designed to apply pressure on key American industries. One of the most prominent retaliatory measures involves imposing tariffs on a range of American goods, from agricultural products to consumer goods like steel, aluminum, and automobiles. Canada plans to target states that are politically crucial to Trump's base, hitting key American industries where it hurts most. These tariffs are expected to disrupt the complex supply chains that bind the North American economy together. Products that traditionally move fluidly between Canada and the United States, such as automobile components, could experience delays, increased prices, and potential shortages. Some American manufacturers have already raised concerns, warning that retaliatory tariffs could escalate tensions, reduce profitability, and lead to layoffs in key industrial sectors. Moreover, Canada's agricultural focus on tariffs is a deliberate strike against American farmers, many of whom rely on exports to Canadian markets. Fruits, vegetables, grains, and dairy products could all become entangled in the tariff war. This is a particularly sensitive area, as American farmers are already struggling with fluctuating commodity prices and supply chain disruptions. By targeting these vulnerabilities, Canada is signaling that it is prepared to play hardball in defending its own economy. But this is only the beginning. Canada's plan to retaliate isn't limited to goods alone. The next step involves a potential curb on energy exports. The oil valve threat. The biggest card in Canada's retaliation plan is its energy exports, particularly oil. Every day, millions of barrels of crude oil cross the border to American refineries. These refineries are heavily dependent on Canadian oil, especially since many were designed to process the specific type of heavy crude that comes from Alberta's oil sands. Any disruption to this supply could have immediate consequences for the United States energy sector and broader economy. Canada has hinted that it might reduce or restrict oil exports in response to the tariffs. Such a move would be unprecedented, but could cause a ripple effect across American industries and consumers. Gasoline prices would spike, and refineries would scramble to find alternative sources of crude oil. The logistics of shifting to other suppliers, such as those in the Middle East or Venezuela, are daunting due to long shipping times and limited pipeline infrastructure. However, this strategy comes with risks for Canada as well. Its oil industry is a cornerstone of the economy, and restricting exports would lead to financial losses, job cuts, and unrest among energy producers. Alberta, in particular, would be hit hard by any decision to limit oil flows. Even so, Canadian officials believe that the political leverage gained from this threat might be enough to force concessions from the United States. Energy experts are warning that if both sides escalate their actions, a full-blown crisis could erupt. Given the potential for these severe consequences, it is vital to examine the long-term impacts this trade conflict could have on economic cooperation and integration between these two neighbors. Long-term implications for the US-Canada trade relationship. The relationship between the United States and Canada has long been one of mutual benefit and interdependence. Historically, the two countries have maintained one of the largest and most integrated trade partnerships in the world, with over $2.5 billion worth of goods and services crossing the border every day. This trade has supported millions of jobs on both sides and fostered economic stability for decades. However, the current trade dispute threatens to unravel much of this progress. If tariffs and retaliatory measures continue to escalate, the consequences could extend beyond short-term price increases and job losses. Companies that depend on cross-border trade may begin to shift their operations to other markets to reduce exposure to future risks. Supply chains that have taken decades to establish could become fragmented, leading to inefficiencies and increased costs across industries. Small businesses and manufacturers are particularly vulnerable. Many of them rely on just-in-time supply chains, where materials and components are delivered as needed to minimize storage costs. Tariffs disrupt this system by increasing prices and delaying shipments, forcing businesses to absorb higher costs or pass them on to consumers. Over time, this could reduce competitiveness and stifle innovation. Additionally, the erosion of trust between the two countries may have diplomatic consequences. Trade agreements like the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, designed to promote cooperation, could be undermined by rising protectionism. Leaders on both sides will need to navigate these tensions carefully to prevent long-term damage to their economic partnership. This brings us to a broader concern: how this bilateral dispute fits into the larger context of global trade and economic diplomacy. The ripple effect on global trade. The United States-Canada trade dispute is not happening in isolation. It is part of a larger wave of protectionist policies that have been emerging around the world. As countries grapple with shifting geopolitical alliances and economic challenges, many are turning to tariffs and trade barriers to protect domestic industries. This trend, however, poses significant risks to the global economy. Experts warn that trade wars between major economies could trigger a domino effect, leading to widespread disruptions in international markets. For example, if the United States imposes additional tariffs on Canada, other countries may follow suit to protect their own interests. The European Union and China have already signaled their readiness to retaliate against American trade policies, which could further destabilize global supply chains. These tensions are particularly concerning in industries that rely on complex cross-border production networks. Automobiles, electronics, and agricultural goods are just a few examples of products that are assembled from components sourced across multiple countries. When trade barriers are introduced, the costs of production increase and delays become inevitable. This creates uncertainty for businesses and discourages investment in long-term projects. Moreover, developing nations that depend on exports to wealthier countries are often the hardest hit by trade disputes. Reduced access to major markets can lead to economic stagnation and social unrest, particularly in regions where jobs are scarce. The World Trade Organization has repeatedly emphasized the importance of open markets and multilateral cooperation to promote global growth, but recent events suggest that these principles are under threat. As the United States and Canada continue their standoff, other nations are watching closely to see how this conflict unfolds. Will it set a precedent for more protectionism, or will cooler heads prevail and restore stability to the global trade system? The stakes have never been higher, and the outcome of this dispute could shape the future of international commerce for years to come. As businesses and communities grapple with the current trade challenges, the Canadian government is already preparing its next set of countermeasures. Canada's retaliation strategy. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's administration has made it clear that Canada will not back down in the face of these tariffs. Among the proposed measures is a tariff on American agricultural goods, which could have a significant impact on Midwest farmers. Many of these farmers rely on exports to Canada to sustain their livelihoods. By imposing tariffs on items like corn, soybeans, and dairy products, Canada seeks to mobilize American agricultural interests to lobby against the trade war. Already, farming associations in states like Iowa and Wisconsin have expressed concern over the potential loss of access to Canadian markets. Additionally, Canada is considering imposing export controls on critical resources such as potash, which is used in fertilizer production, and uranium, which is vital for nuclear power plants. Restricting access to these resources could create supply chain bottlenecks that disrupt key sectors of the American economy. The energy sector is another area where Canada wields considerable leverage. Alberta, home to vast oil sands reserves, supplies millions of barrels of oil to the United States each day. If Canada were to restrict or impose tariffs on these exports, it could lead to a spike in fuel prices across American markets. Such a move would likely have a ripple effect, increasing transportation and production costs for businesses and consumers alike. Trudeau's government has emphasized that these measures are not intended to escalate tensions, but to defend Canada's economic interests. However, political analysts warn that retaliation could provoke further countermeasures from the Trump administration, potentially leading to an all-out trade war. Both countries must navigate this delicate situation with caution to avoid further economic fallout. While Canada sharpens its retaliatory tools, another looming factor could influence the outcome of these tensions: pressure from international allies and competitors. The role of global trade dynamics. The United States' protectionist policies are not occurring in a vacuum. Across the globe, countries are monitoring the unfolding situation between the United States and Canada to gauge how it might affect their own trade relationships. Major economies such as the People's Republic of China and the European Union have already experienced similar trade conflicts with the United States, resulting in retaliatory tariffs and strained diplomatic ties. For Canada, this global context presents both challenges and opportunities. On one hand, the United States' aggressive trade policies could push Canada to strengthen its economic ties with other nations. Canadian officials have been in talks with partners in Asia, Europe, and Latin America to explore new trade agreements that could reduce the country's reliance on the American market. Initiatives such as the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership offer Canada a chance to diversify its export destinations and attract foreign investment. On the other hand, there is a risk that other countries might use the current trade dispute to their advantage. Competitors like Brazil and Australia, for instance, could seek to capture market share in industries where Canadian exports face new barriers. This underscores the importance of strategic planning to ensure Canada remains competitive on the global stage. Meanwhile, international trade organizations such as the World Trade Organization are closely observing the situation. Some experts have suggested that Canada could file a formal complaint with the WTO, arguing that the United States tariffs violate established trade rules. However, the effectiveness of such measures is uncertain, particularly given the Trump administration's criticisms of the WTO and its reluctance to abide by international arbitration. As the trade war unfolds, it will likely shape the global economic landscape for years to come. Countries that can adapt and build new alliances may emerge stronger, while those that remain entrenched in outdated trade policies risk being left behind. While Canada focuses on strengthening its international ties, another player is taking a bold approach to tariffs and trade in a way that has drawn global attention. Lessons from Mexico's response to United States tariffs. Canada is not the only country dealing with the impact of American protectionism. Mexico, which shares a similarly complex trade relationship with the United States, offers valuable insights into how countries can respond to aggressive tariff policies. In recent years, Mexico has faced multiple rounds of tariffs, particularly on its automotive and agricultural exports. However, the country has demonstrated remarkable resilience by pursuing a multifaceted strategy to protect its economy. One key element of Mexico's approach has been the promotion of domestic industries. The government launched initiatives to reduce reliance on American imports by investing in local production and supply chains. This strategy, known as Plan Mexico, aims to create jobs and stimulate economic growth while insulating the country from external trade shocks. Additionally, Mexico has leveraged its role as a crucial link in North American supply chains to negotiate more favorable terms. By emphasizing the interconnected nature of industries like automotive manufacturing, Mexican officials have successfully lobbied for exemptions and adjustments to United States trade policies. Mexico's experience highlights the importance of diversification and strategic alliances in navigating trade disputes. As Canada faces similar challenges, there are valuable lessons to be learned from its southern neighbors' resilience and adaptability. The trade tensions between Canada and the United States have set the stage for a high-stakes battle with far-reaching consequences. As both nations prepare for the next round of negotiations, businesses, workers, and consumers alike are left wondering what the future holds. What do you think about this unfolding trade war? How will it impact you, your community, or the industries you follow? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. If you found this video informative, please subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and give us a like. See you in the next video.